Hey, it's Casey here, and if you don't know who I am, I do Album of the Year reviews on Album of the Year. I wouldn't say I'm extraordinarily active. I would say that I am pretty seldomly active on the website. I will pop in and make classic reviews every once in a while, but mostly what I do is just cherry pick some albums I want to talk about. I don't really stay in the major album discourse a lot. I try to just keep to what I'm primarily interested in. Maybe that's a little selfish, but I I just like reviewing things that, I'm genuinely interested in and I'm like genuinely interested in talking about. For example, this Clancy by 21 Pilots. An album that I reviewed when it came out, and I was pretty happy with it. I would say that there were things about it that I didn't really love, but there was things about it that I really, really did like. For example, I really enjoyed the opener Overcompensate. I thought it was some really, really well produced hip hop, along with some really nice elements of art pop and all these rumbling bass tones, and I just really enjoyed the overall, sort of atmospheric take on everything that was happening in the production. And of course, next semester, the follow up single, which honestly was is one of my favorite 21 Pilot songs I think I've ever heard. It's legit so good, and I think the rest of the album kind of takes like a bit of a dip in terms of its quality, but just like a tiny dip, because I don't think the rest of the songs really match up to the initial hype that these singles bring. In fact, I would say the major appeal of Clancy is probably going to be in the first half and primarily the first leg of the album's runtime. It's not to say that it's a bad album. I just think that a lot of the stronger cuts come in the first act. Midwest Indigo, Routines in the Night, Vignette are all bangers, but I feel like the rest of the album is kind of like this mixed bag, which, on some days I can appreciate, on some days I don't really know how to. My album of the year review, I initially gave it around a 90 to like a 92, then it dropped to like a 76, which is like a huge drop off. But then it sort of, kind of was growing on me a little bit, and I kind of enjoyed it a little more. So I gave it around like might have been like an 82 or an 83. I'm not even sure, but I know it's significantly better than a 76 now, because just giving it more context and listening to it more, it's an album that's kind of flip flop for me. I will say their previous album, what was it, Scaled and Icy, is an album that I think gets a lot of hate. Maybe justifiable, because it's such a tonal shift away from Trench. Trench is it's not even like so much of an argument. It is the magnum opus, but if you're like a hardcore 21 Pilots fan, you might prefer Blurry Face or Vessel, or God forbid Regional at best. I don't know how you can I don't know. But Trench is where it's at. But Scaled and Icy was a huge regression from Trench's quality, and I actually liked Scaled and Icy. Clancy felt like it was. I think the drawback of Clancy was that it was trying a little too hard to be Trench. Quite literally, in the first few seconds, welcome back to Trench. And it's like this whole like, oh guys, we're going back to Trench, but kinda, but like not really. It kind of just feels like a combination of like the aesthetics of some slight, tonal aesthetics from Trench, and kind of like let's say, the attitude of like a Blurry Face. And for me, that kind of caused a bit of like a cognitive dissonance that I guess I just didn't really understand in the album. But as someone who has, I think, come to appreciate like conceptual types of art more, and like getting behind like the lore and everything about it, I think that I'm able to appreciate the album more knowing that. But I think if you have to like digest like hours of lore to enjoy an album, is it really a great album? I mean, it can be. I mean, certainly, like for, classic records that kind of require you to, like, have some forethought and maybe a little empathy to, like, understand the concept and, like, the meaning behind the piece. It certainly does require a level of, like, willingness to be, like, willingness to kind of see or read between the lines of certain things. I think that's kind of how I felt about. I don't know. It's how I felt about some records that I guess I just didn't really understand or wasn't really willing to understand. I would say an example I would, attribute is probably OK Computer, which is weird because it's an album that is universally loved. But I think after, reaching into the context of that album more, I think I was fully able to kind of grasp what it was truly going for. And I think that made it hit 10 times harder. Especially worked with Clancy as I was able to connect with next semester a lot more. Vignette was a track that really hit me hard on newer listens, and everything started to click for me. And I think revisiting this album now, I'm starting to appreciate it even more for what it's trying to do. And universally, 21 Pilots has never been like the most like acclaimed band simply because like they kind of operated under this like we're alternative and like we're not like other bands and and it was just like but then they became like every other band. And that was kind of like a turnoff for me because like if you're saying you're not like every other band but what you're doing is pretty much indicative of every other band and everyone starts copying you and you're no longer like the sole pariah of like of alternative music, it kind of just becomes cringe. And that's what I didn't like about Blurry Face. It's because it just became indicative of like a huge contradiction. And that's why it sucked. There's some songs I love off of it, but most of them are just like I can't stand them. But Clancy feels like an album that kind of towed the line with what Blurryface was trying to do and delivered something genuinely like compelling. And I think returning to it now, I'm certainly kind of seeing the validity in a lot of the tracks on Clancy. So yeah, for, revisiting an album, it's around an 8.2. It's still a pretty good album. I don't think it's their best. I think Trench is their best, but I think it's like a little close to Trench. That's sort of how I feel about it. Ooh, yeah. Peace.